come from a two-room house. I didn't have electricity while growing up. You know, it was so bad at some point. We'll use that iron. My mom, when she had my uniform, she will use the iron where you have to put in a primer stove.
Oh, yes, I know that iron.
That thing then colors my shirts black.
Black text God.
Because, you know, there was a negative connotation that had to do with the black text word. So I wanted somehow to find a way to take away that negative connotation that has to do with assisting your family. So me, I'm just like, since my black text is big, I must just as well call myself Black Text God. I think one of the things that I will advise people to not do, you don't share your salary with your parents.
Yeesh,
You don't share
made
your
that mistake.
Me, they don't know. They really don't know how much I earn. And I can hear estimations. They start budgeting
for you
with your salary now. So never do that. And that's one thing that I never did. I never shared any figures at all. So whatever that I provide, it's enough.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Safe Space, brought to you by Tsogang Batung. I'm your host for today, Tato Pule. The topic that we will be discussing is breaking the cycle of poverty. So when I thought of this topic, I looked at the structure of South African society, how unequal it is, and how many of South Africa's people are still living stuck in the poverty cycle. And recognizing that, you know, the youth is majority of the population in the country. Given our history, we also have unprecedented access to opportunities compared to our parents. So more often than not, we find ourselves being first generation this, first generation that, first generation graduate, first generation millionaire, you know, and having to take on that responsibility to really use the access that you have to the opportunities to elevate your family. You also hear people talking about black tax and, you know, and how, you know, which is pretty much a sign that, you know, we're having to take care of our broader family, not just ourselves. So in thinking about who I needed to invite today, I didn't even have to think twice because they've been very open about their journey in terms of where they come from, you know, where they are, and they very much appreciated that journey in the way that they shared it. And it's none other than Shumani Tshifhango.
Hi.
Hi, Shumani.
How are you doing?
Welcome.
Oh,
thank you for joining us today.
No, thank you for inviting me.
I guess the platform is yours. Can you please tell us who you are, what you do, and just jump into your journey from there?
Oh, okay. So obviously my name is Shumani Tshifhango. So I come from Venda in Limpopo in Shandima. Funny thing, next to where Lufs comes from in Shandima. And you know, I wanna try to reduce the story into a very summarized one.
Really?
So I went to. Oh, do you want the whole story?
Yes. And we wanted in segments. We want to know, like high school, growing up, and then maybe you share about your varsity experience, and then work.
I think when you do professional interviews, you learn to just jump into things like professional experience and all those kind of things. Okay, now I'll go into a little bit of detail.
Yes.
So I grew up in Shandima in Venda. One of the things that actually inspired me quite a lot is growing up with a domestic working mom who earned 800 rand and sacrificed almost everything for me to go to a good high school, which was Mbilwi. And
the famous one.
The one with the smart kids. Except I was definitely not close to. And I mean, I struggled quite a little bit to adapt a little bit to the high school because the standard was a little bit higher, relatively compared to my primary school. And so when I went there, I was probably taking around position 261, getting an average of 40 to 50. And that continued until grade 10. Then that's when I broke into, top 100. And, the rest was history, top 20, all of that. And I think, one of the things that I really appreciate about high school is the fact that I got to meet a lot of young people who actually really introduced me to what university was. Because to me, university was just University of Venda.
Really?
Yes, I didn't know anything about university. And then after that, I had a friend of mine called Rotondo, and she used to say, "Hey, I want to go to UCT, the land of honey and milk." And no one has been to university. So I'm like, what is this UCT, God? And that's actually how I applied to UCT. It was through discussion from my friends in class, actually. And at first, I wanted to be a CA. Always wanted to be a CA. I'm sorry. I'm glad I didn't, because I don't think I would have enjoyed accounting. But I then actually, when I was looking at applying for bursaries, I came across an ESCOM bursary application form. And on the career side, it wrote e.g. electrical engineering. I'm like, if they're saying, example, electrical engineering, that actually mean that I have a higher chance of getting in if I just put electrical. Yes, and I applied for electrical. I applied electrical as my second choice at UCT. And then I got in, and that's how I actually ended up in electrical
UCT.
Engineering.
So
and at
just
UCT.
before we jump to UCT, you mentioned that your mom was a domestic worker and earned 800 Rand. So what was it like? Like, what were some of like the day-to-day challenges, and how has it like shaped who you are today?
To be honest with you, I think one of the largest things that I grew up with is my mom was willing to invest everything that in my own career or my beliefs or anything. She was very positive about it. And the reason why I do think so is because my mom actually passed grade 12. She just didn't have money to go to university. So I kind of do feel like she probably saw herself in me, and she didn't want me to experience the same. Even though she got 35 in physics, she still passed standard grade physics. But some of the challenges were, like, we lived in a 2-room mud house. We couldn't even.
Oh yes, I know. The picture you've shared the picture. Hey,
I think I share that picture all the time. Every time when I'm thinking about where I come from, I always share that picture. And we come from a 2-room mud house. I didn't have electricity while growing up. It was so bad at some point. We'll use that iron. My mom, when she had my uniform, she will use the iron where you have to put in a primer stove.
oh yes, I know that iron.
That thing then colors my shirts black. And then now they see it at school that this one is using some kind of iron. So they will tease you about those kind of things. But I think the electricity part was a big challenge, and starting with a candle was actually really hard. And yeah, there's generally a lot. Hardly ate bread that, if my mom give me money to buy bread, I will actually run like crazy. I'll run. She'll give me literally, we couldn't afford Sasco bread. So I will have to go for, I think, the Spar bread, and which was sold so far. So those are the kind of some of experiences that I actually experienced. And also not going to school with lunchbox or anything. Yeah.
What kept you going? Like what? Because sometimes there had to be a force within you that said, "Look, I'm gonna switch on this candle. I'm gonna wear my blackened shirt."
Yeah.
And how were you in spirit? Like, how did it affect you? Your motivation? How did you remain motivated?
I think one of the things that I always wanted to do while growing up has been building a house for my mom. I think that has always been my biggest dream since I was a young kid, because I saw the circumstances that we actually were living under. So, I mean, so many times I'll find myself in class drawing the exact house that I want to build, just to keep me awake, if that makes sense. And to be honest with you, I'm also a very competitive person. So when I was struggling in high school, I'm like, there must be a way to actually do better, you know. Also, finding a way to improve yourself was was amazing, and learning from other people as well who are around you. I mean, for an example, at UCT, when I went to UCT, there were so many people who even today are still like inspiring and have amazing journeys that really helped me to actually stay motivated and believe that it is actually possible.
So talking about UCT,
Yeah.
like how, so UCT, higher education in general in South Africa is brings people from all walks of life together. The privileged, the poor, some of us were on bursaries, and some people like, had the hundreds of thousands they could be paid by the parents. And then you go to UCT, which is this elite university.
Yeah.
And then, you walk in and you're like, yo, some people, we eat the same meals, we sleep in the same bed.
In the same.
But later on, hey, you're getting a car, it's a convertible, you're never in South Africa because you're on holidays. Perhaps you can afford some of the luxuries that other students can't.
Yeah.
So, like, how did that? I know that from my end, I struggle to fit in.
Yeah.
And I put a lot of pressure on my mom to get me an iPad, to get me an iPhone.
Makes a lot of sense.
So I can just
in class.
Yes. And obviously, I was
notes.
like, it's because of education. That was the only way.
Yeah.
But it was also because I wanted to fit in, even though I didn't necessarily come from a privileged background.
Yeah.
I felt that pressure.
No, that's correct. I mean, when I went to university, first of all, I couldn't even speak English. And the only thing that I used to do was probably studying and going to SEF, which probably I still go, do I? I don't know. And you know what SEF is?
Yes, I know SEF. It held a lot of people through varsity. Some of the SCF students are very disciplined. Hey,
you'll be praying in tongues then. And one of the things that I did when I got to university is that, just to give a little bit of background, a lot of students that come from unprivileged background, they often stay together when they go to university. But me, I was pampering. I wanted to know everything. I wanted to be in house comms. I wanted to do all these kind of things. And, one of the first challenge came through as in high school, we don't have leadership, leadership positions or anything. So we only focused on academics only. So now I'm mixing things. Hey, academics started cracking also. But also, me, I won't lie to you, I partied a lot at university. I really, generally, I tried everything. I really tried everything. And, it got to a point where I would think I was a cool kid at some point.
Yeah.
And
you were, because Shumani, I knew about you. I didn't even know you, but I was like, I knew that there was a Shumani.
Yeah.
And even in the dating game, you were within some broken hearts here and there.
Yeah. Yeah.
How did you then integrate so easily into because it sounds it wasn't like much of a challenge.
It was still very tough. One of the things that I had to learn, obviously, when we do AGMs, you have to speak English, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that I had to do was really working hard on speaking English, because I used to think in Venda, like I translate. If I'm saying I'm sitting, I'll think Ndozula, then I'm sitting, translate to actually say it in English, if that makes sense. So being in positions like house comms, for an example, really helped quite a lot. Being an investor helped quite a lot. Consulting club, and just being surrounded by other students who had the privilege to go to these amazing schools. So
Yeah.
they really shaped me really well. And to be honest with you, I don't think it was easy actually. It looked easier, but it wasn't easy because I started at some point I started feeling like I started pretending like I come from a good family.
Oh,
I started fitting in that way that I was starting to lose myself,
yeah.
if that makes sense.
You were
And
starting to like, but you had integrated into
I
that.
had
And
integrated,
that,
but people
but
didn't
then your
think I was
circle,
coming from. So I'm like, that's what I'm gonna take.
they didn't know how you weren't very open about your
No,
journey at that
I
time.
was not very open, and it got to a point where it started really taking a little bit of a knock within my academics, and that's when I learned that you can still integrate and still be okay with where you come from. And I think that's when I started becoming vocal about where I come from. It
Yeah.
started from that, from
This
running
was
away
around
from
third
losing. Yeah, around
third
third year.
year.
And it helped quite a lot because then I started working from exactly where I am, not pretending like I'm here when I'm here, and starting appreciating all the improvements and all the achievements, as small as they are, to get where I am today. If that makes sense.
So you had to like sort of like tell your friends now you had to be more open with them
Yeah.
because
I had to
you
be.
had to be like, yo,
I was too much of a cool kid, so I really had to. And it's
how was it? Like, did you have to like how did you come out? Like, did you have to
so the funniest thing is that I actually just posted a status on Facebook, talking about there was one time my mom was trying to renovate the house. The house was shaking, and I think I was kind of
was
really.
she still in the mud house or now she had
No, she was trying to build some other house
oh
that didn't make
okay.
sense. Didn't make sense, honestly. And I just remember going back home. I think I'd extended like a year of university. Going back home, and I'm like, yo, the pressure now. You're looking at the house, you're looking at this new house, nothing is making sense. And I'm like, nah, something has to change here.
I'm gonna need to do something.
I'm gonna need to do something. And the best thing was that because it allowed me, like, I think being true to yourself is one of the best things ever you can ever do to yourself because it allows you to be the best version of yourself.
Yeah. Because I realized that, people who come from poor backgrounds, they're not necessarily like open about it, it's embarrassing or they're scared to be looked down on. So I do think it's a part of it, maybe perhaps it's a self-acceptance issue
Yeah,
of the situation, right? Because your brain just wants to escape, of course.
definitely.
Because
Definitely.
what else are you going to do if you're in the situation that you're in?
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I find is people are okay with people saying that they come from rich background. And I found a lot of people ask me like, oh, why do you speak a lot about where you come from? And sometimes I look at them like, isn't it obvious? Do I have to be explaining this in 2023? If that makes sense. So I think it's easier for
Clearly,
people.
this is not for you. You're not the audience of
No,
this.
and I'm not asking for anyone's pettiness.
Okay.
Like, I'm not saying feel sorry for me. This is just my reality, and that's how it is.
So your friends were like, did they start now helping you financially? And like they were from, so it's like, could you ever ask them for help?
Yeah. I actually have a friend who actually helped me one time when I was homeless at university and paid for my accommodation, all those kind of things.
Yeah.
So my friends really helped me quite a lot too.
So the openness actually allowed your support system
To be, yes,
to be better,
exactly.
right?
Because then at that time when I was in open, when you're in op square there and you're hungry and it's rough, who are you gonna ask for help with food when you're there shining and pretending like you a rich cool kid. Yeah.
Yeah. So then talking more about UCT, right? So there's those personal struggles, right? But then you have to show up,
Yeah, you
you
really
have
have
to go to that TAT, you have to study. Luckily, the high school, if you come from a good school, I think you stand a good chance of also making it through to us, whether public or private.
Yeah.
So, like, when you started, like, being more serious about your studies, like, what was that change? Like, how was it like?
I think, I what happened was, I think I described the year in which academics really didn't go as well. And I think within that year, I lost my bursary. It was a rough year. Lost my bursary, everything. So being a cool kid now was not paying off because, you can't even afford to stay or to your academics in general.
And it's also your way out. So it's like a stressful situation now because you're like...
Now it's double things. Now you're stressing about your work. Now you're also stressing about your payments. It's two things that you're actually stressing about. And I think what then happened was, like you think you're cool and all of that, and you start failing academics, and people start talking. Nah, he's not smart.
And there was people access at that time, so people could actually see your results if they knew your student number, and they could guess it.
They definitely could see your results.
Especially the popular kids, because you were always like, let's see.
DPR.
I can't know you're so cool.
Let's see the DPR.
It was rough at that time.
It was so rough. It was definitely rough. So one of the things that I experienced was actually how cruel the world can be when you make such mistakes. So as a result, I'm like, I think now I have to make better decisions relatively for none of this to happen again. Because now you're alone. Not really alone, but you are alone. You failed. That's affecting your transcript. Another thing, you apply for jobs, they're like, we want 75 average. And there's that one mistake only has even impacted
your ability to get employment.
To even just get an interview, one interview only. And you won that chance, right? So I didn't ever want to find myself to be in that.
Again.
And after experiencing how horrible it is and how lonely that journey can be, I'm like, nah, I'm going to make sure that every decision that I make from today onwards, I don't find myself in that position, or there's just less a chance of actually finding myself in that position.
Well, look at the bright side, like making such a mistake really early on.
Yeah.
There's much more to lose right now, right?
No,
so it's like that discipline, it's almost like I can see why going through that would have been necessary for you to actually now, exceed whatever limitations you might face afterwards.
No, definitely. And to be honest with you, I still don't think the experience in itself was the worst experience ever.
Yeah.
I do feel like UCT posed great challenges in my life, and I learned a lot throughout, whether it was academics or just life in general. And we were woke. Just life. Just life in general. I learned a lot, and I appreciate just the whole box, the whole experience that I got from UCT.
It was holistic. It wasn't just like, let me go and just be a bookworm, right? You came out with other talents, like you had worked on your leadership skills.
Yeah.
So I do think it's important that, when you go to university, one must at least focus. Well, the academics must come first, but you can't just focus on the academics because it will limit your chance to grow.
You can't.
So then,
and it's not good on your mental health also to just focus on that only.
It's not good for mental health.
You need to escape to do other things.
Because you can't be within books 24/7. That's just not realistic. So did you decide to move to finance? You decided to move from engineering, right?
Yeah.
And you did your Master of Commerce.
Yes,
in risk management.
Yes.
So, like, what influenced that move? Were you like, I want to make more money, like the engineering? Because you were like, nah, I'm gonna need to end up at a bank, yeah. Because like the MCOM is like your way in, like
it is your way. It's definitely your way in, thanks to David Taylor. No, actually, when I was explaining the story, remember when I was talking about the form, filling the engineering form, and I realized now I did know from the start that engineering was not made for me. You know, I'll be like doing labs and stuff. The labs work that we had to do, like in electrical, and someone on the side there will be soldering a circuit. Someone, user tickets sometimes can be extra. Someone is like, this is interesting. This is amazing. I'm like, how is this amazing? So, and I mean, I think my friend actually offensive helped quite a lot in this process, because I remember just speaking to him also and saying, yo, I'm about to finish this thing, but I hate this thing. And there's no, like, that confusion process is the worst one, because I was anxious at the same time, and I'm like, what am I going to do? How am I going to go work in Pretoria? I mean, you can work in Pretoria, but
it was still ESCOM. You had to go to ESCOM.
no, I actually got another bursary at CSIR.
Oh, at CSIR.
Yeah, so I had to go to CSIR. And I was like, hey, this is not exactly what I want to do. So I then decided to write a letter to my bursary to tell them that I don't think I will be able to continue with this. And I applied for the MCOM.
Many people who don't come from privileged backgrounds, right? It's like a job. So it's like,
no shame.
and then like, so how did you?
I mean,
Tell us more. Like, what was involved in that process?
I don't know if this is gonna get me in trouble, but I just told them if they hire me, they will hire one of the worst people ever to actually work. I can't afford to pay them, but they have a choice. They must hire me if they want to hire me. But this is not what I like. I've done vacation work before. This is not exactly what I want to do.
Yeah, but then it goes to the saying that, I think you were being very honest and authentic.
I was honest
at the time. And people do appreciate that, And that's why you probably had the outcome that you did, because you opened your heart out and became vulnerable.
Yeah.
Whereas someone would be like, I'm not going to even consider it, I need to get this paycheck. My mom is like waiting for me to graduate.
And there was pressures on that as well, on the mom's side, because now they're like, hi, you're done. You study 5 years. Now you want to study more. You must finish.
They're like, you must finish. And
yeah.
So you did the MCOM, but how was it like from a technical point of view, switching from engineering to like finance? Like if someone is looking at making that change, like what are some of the things that they need to consider?
I think, well, one of the things I was lucky on was during at UCT, I was involved in different societies while studying engineering. And also I took other electives, like I was a stats tutor for commerce. I was already involved in the commerce division, including, suit up days and stuff.
So, wait, you were in InvestSoc, ne?
Yes.
Oh, yes, you were in InvestSoc.
Yeah, so, and consulting club and all of that.
And consulting club.
So I kind of really interacted quite a lot with commerce students. But still, the switch up between the two courses, so like I didn't find stuff like quants and programming and all of that hard, because I did that in engineering already. But what I then found hard was finance itself.
Economics.
Econometrics, I did econometrics, which was which was quite fine because it was still quantitative kind of. But finance, we did like financial derivatives, which is like a very technical finance. That I didn't know what a swap, a value a swap. What is that? All those kind of things. So I had to get used to like take my head out of that engineering space, because engineering, a mic is a mic. Like you programming a
Like
laptop.
very deterministic.
But was this finance? Yo, looking at swap caps and everything and stock prices, but you're trying to make them make sense. But it's very tough to get your head to that space, especially from engineering. So I kind of really thought I had to adjust quite a bit.
And what did you do? Like, did you continue along the discipline route and like just having built that discipline in undergrad,
Yeah.
you didn't like struggle with like, you know, having, because I can imagine
So
it's stressful, right? Because
definitely.
you haven't encountered this
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
So how were you able, how does one keep motivated? How do you, what was your survival coping skills at the
I
time?
hear you. So I think in the MCOM class that I did, so they accept different students from other fields.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, after that finance class, I would just go to one of the commerce students that studied finance undergrad. I'd be like, can you please explain this to me? I think that was like a really quicker way of actually understanding, getting there, compared to trying to do it just by myself. If that makes sense. Because hey, sometimes you'll be there in the library trying to force things and things aren't working. You must go to other students to actually help you. And that is a catalyst actually of you getting to understand stuff that you're not familiar with relatively compared to just doing it by yourself. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing in your journey is that you had this drive. You knew that you needed a support system,
Yes,
basically,
definitely. Yes.
and you made active steps to try and get that support. So instead
And
of like in the face of a challenge, instead of like retreating into yourself,
yeah,
in you know going into that victim,
mentality.
because
Yeah.
now you'll be like, is it because I'm coming from this background?
Yeah.
And you do a lot of that. So yeah, how did you like approach that?
I think another thing that is very important is what is it like? Be very realistic with yourself. If you don't know something, you don't know something. If you're good at something, you're good at something. And I think that's the best way for you to grow is being able to understand your weaknesses and your strength and be realistic about it. You don't have to be too motivated to actually really know those. And then you actually start working on your weaknesses so that you can get to a point where you're a little bit balanced, if that makes sense. So I think that's actually the first step. Understanding that I don't have a finance background and was good enough for me to say that actually, in this course that I'm gonna do, I will need a lot of help. I mean, at first I started by doing it by myself. I think I got 27% for for the first test. And I mean, I ended up with probably close to 70, if not more than 60 on the course, which is like a technical finance course. Is very, very insanely tough. And yeah, it is that. I think realizing your weaknesses and your strength.
You make it sound so easy.
No, it is
Yeah,
actually tough.
it's
It is
actually
actually
tough.
tough. People don't really want to approach their self. They don't want to be realistic to themselves. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. So now, Shumani, you know, you've conquered MCOM now. By now, you probably will know you want to work for a bank, right?
Yeah.
So like, and then so afterwards you joined a corporate. How was that experience? Like, were you now in your element? Like, okay, I got this degree. You know, any moment now.
No, and I mean the funniest thing is when I was at uni, I interviewed probably for 20 roles after when I was doing the masters, and I was getting so many final rounds. Yeah, and I didn't get any job within it. And so now you can imagine that process. First of all, I dropped a bursary where I had a job. Now I have an engineering and a master's in commerce. They still don't want to hire me. I'm like, what's happening? And I mean, that's when, after that, I think the first job that I got was Prescient as a manager in Cape Town. then I got PwC, and then I got ABSA. And to be honest, at first, I was one thing that made me also choose ABSA was obviously I wanted to be in a bank, and I had been interviewing for banking roles, and but I was tired of Cape Town. I needed like a breath of air because we did a lot in Cape Town. Like, university was very...
Nah, Cape Town must remain a holiday spot. Like, there's just so much triggering and trauma that happened in Cape Town that, as soon as you're done, you're like, I'm out.
I'm out, yeah, definitely. And the funniest thing is that with the ABSA job that I actually got, it was actually a permanent role. So I didn't go into a grad program. So I actually applied for a permanent role, and I was kind of really competing with other people who had work experience, and I actually got the job.
So yeah, I wanted to ask you that. So you've also climbed up quite quickly.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Because I think you're vice president now.
Yes, I'm vice president now.
Yeah, which is like close to senior management.
Yeah, it's close to director.
Very.
Yeah.
It's like the next step.
Yeah.
So how did you, because they took you didn't have the experience.
Yeah.
So obviously there's some finesse that's happening here. There's some, you know how to deal with people, and you know how to approach situation. And I think coming from the background that you do, of course you always have that humanity within you that you can relate to people. So what was the secret like? Because you even went on a trip with your mom. You won a trip.
Yeah.
So what's the key?
To be honest with you, I think the failing moment at university really helped quite a lot, because I think I learned a lot from that experience. And also studying something that I didn't like that much really kind of helped quite a lot, because the moment I got something that I wanted, I kind of really, just like I was working for all those 5 years that I didn't do something that I actually wanted to do. And I mean, I just, as a grad, I mean, I started a little bit slow, but I was very super dedicated. I was working like a really long hours than needed, asking a lot of questions. And I think one of the things that I was lucky with at ABSA is that I was trusted with a lot of responsibilities. Like, I was a market risk analyst for almost 11 countries. And that kind of, when you're market risk for those kind of countries, I mean, Africa, there's a lot to actually develop. There's so many ways that you can actually improve your working conditions already, the stuff that you use at work. So I think I was just really, really insanely driven. And I mean, to be honest, the award thing, I didn't see it coming. But I started realizing that might be a possibility when I received the top analyst award. Top risk
so people
analyst
are watching.
Yeah, and this is within a year of working. And you can imagine how crazy that is. And then there is this investment banking award, which you're literally competing probably with everyone, not only people from South Africa, but all the countries as well. And I was actually nominated by my colleagues to...
They were watching.
They were definitely watching. And I think one of the things that they kept saying is they couldn't believe how I improved in such a very short space of time. And I mean, it is tough to work in places where they recognize young talent. So I was kind of really appreciative quite a lot of that. And yeah, and I won a trip to go to Mexico, and with a partner. At first I wanted to take a friend, because I'm like, me, I want to enjoy myself. And me, I like things. So I'm like, I wanna enjoy this trip. And within that, I then decided, actually, it might be a good idea to take my mom to this trip. And we actually went on our first trip overseas.
How was that like?
That was very...
Because you were like so happy about that. You were like, I'm taking my mom overseas, y'all.
Yeah, I think it was actually
Like a turnaround moment. Now it's like we're going overseas now.
with the US visas.
With US
10-year
visas.
US visas. Hopefully she doesn't know that she has 10-year US visa because she want to travel more. It's there. It's sitting there somewhere. I think that was a good experience for me because I've always wanted to treat my mom for how much she sacrificed. I mean, and I think it, people have seen me doing that so many times. When I'm graduating, firstly I had to pay for my whole family to come down. You can imagine, that's insanely tough. And I mean, it was her first time coming to Cape Town, so that was a step, like from Cape Town, from Venda to Cape Town, and from
But they
Cape
had
Town
to come see her. I know.
from Cape Town to Mexico.
I remember my brother was like, "Hey, you went to university here. This is your campus."
Yes. And I think one of the actual, one of the things that I even laughed, I was embarrassed about when we were at the trip. It's when she's taking hotel things. I'm like, yo, now we're not
and wants
taking
to
you.
fly for like over 20 hours.
Yes. Now I'm like,
With the hotel thing. But then it's because she also appreciates that,
yeah,
because sometimes like you tend to think it's a waste,
Yeah.
to be quite honest. And there's people who need it.
Yeah.
Who need it. That's probably where she was coming from. But about that, so in my experience, when I started working,
yeah,
like there was a lot of like there wasn't a startup apartment,
okay,
a startup car.
Yeah.
And so there wasn't a trust fund like waiting for me.
Yes.
And like you said, your mom was like, "You're gonna work now." Even my mom was like, "Hey, man, you just got an actual science degree at UCT. Like, where's the job? And then so back then there was, because of the scarcity of things, like being broke like was serious. I even had this thing where I was like, I convinced myself that showering with cold water is a good thing physiologically.
Yes.
But deep down inside, that geyser, it takes a lot of electricity.
And it does,
Yeah. And then like elevated myself economically.
Yeah.
And now, like, being broke is like, oh, I'm going to have a wholesome weekend
Now
indoors.
you even gym at the class like an activity.
Yeah, like now it's like, when you're broke, the entertainment budget is finished. It's like the entertainment
budget is big.
Yeah. And then maybe you might have to sit out a trip.
Yeah.
So it's like there's changing levels of brokenness, right, as you go along. And what I don't want to, I think your relationship with money also needs to change as well. From a position where like you were in that poverty situation, right? And then now there's abundant resources.
Yeah.
And you're still carrying through that poverty mindset. Like for instance,
like
let's say you make 100 million.
Yeah.
Buy a 20 million rent house. Then you're like, I need to make 200 more million, to make up for that.
Yeah.
Because you're like always thinking that the money's going to run out.
Yeah.
Like, and sometimes you might even compromise your own values and beliefs and your dreams, just focusing solely on like, I need to make sure I have enough money and stuff like that. So how has your journey been like? Because now obviously it's soft life vibes,
Oh God. You mean my journey with money?
Like, how do you see money now? Because it was very scarce back then. But then now, like,
to be honest, that's a very tough question.
Really?
Yes, it is a tough question because, growing up where I grew up, I didn't understand the value of money
Yeah.
that much. I didn't. Where was I gonna learn that? And now you come here. Now you adulting, and you can make easily stupid decisions with your money. To be honest with you, I think I enjoyed my 20s a lot with my money.
Yes.
And I made a lot of mistakes with my money as well. Right now I own a flat in Midrand. I think that was a good investment, even though I just did it out of. I actually entered into a bit of debt when I was building for my mom's house. But my relationship with money is actually getting better now as I'm growing up, I think. Also, my entertainment budget. Hey,
The entertainment budget is like, it's problematic. It's
yo,
tough to control,
it is tough to control because also you're tired from work.
Yeah, and you need an
You
escape.
need an escape.
You worked so hard and you now
Yeah,
need to reward yourself.
you need to reward yourself.
And then like now, your mates are also working
Uh,
now.
and
You
we
have to
all, and we all, at UCT, we could go out with 100 rand and go have Abantu shots there. There's something you'll find a way to be entertained. But now as you're growing older, even the level of spending increases as well, which is funny enough. And I mean, to be honest with you, I don't want my level of spending to decrease as much. I'll hope to still. I hope to
because I
still.
do think that, like for instance, staying indoors for the week, right? It feels like,
Sorry.
there's no electricity, there's no food. That's like it's the same emotional intensity, I think, which makes it difficult to make sacrifices now. Because you're like, I don't want to be left in a position where I'm wanting. I don't want to, you're always like caught up in that survival mode.
Yeah, definitely. On my side, I don't want to be in a position where I have to think about if I can afford something. I think I'm definitely working towards a point where I don't want to be stressing about money. And I'm also not like at the big save 90% of your salary. You're young, you must utilize your money. You must just utilize it in a good way.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that we're tackling this question together because this question is tough.
Yeah, no,
And
because
it's all of
also
us are
tough
navigating it.
Yeah, because I also came from a position where money was scarce at some point and there was nothing.
Yeah.
And I'm struggling with it as well. I'm struggling with like saying, like I said, I'll be like, let me have a wholesome weekend. And then it feels like back in the day when I would shower with cold water.
Yeah.
And I think it's because a certain hardwiring happens when you're constantly in that survival mode that needs unwinding.
Yes, it actually
When
does.
finally because the money will never be enough.
No, it will never.
So when does it get enough? So are you going to be pushing hard? Like I think the most worrying one is when you start now engaging in things that that go against your values and beliefs because you want to secure the bag,
Yeah.
So I do think it's a conversation that we need to reflect upon.
Definitely.
Especially if you consider this, right? There's this also talk of black tax, and the fact that we call it a black tax, I think it says a lot about how we feel, right? About assisting our families. Because, a tax is not a good thing. Why isn't it like a black grant or like another way to describe it? Why do we call it a tax?
Actually, I used to call myself Black Tax God. I don't know if you've seen that.
I haven't seen it. Black tax God.
Because, there was a negative connotation that had to do with the black tax word. So I wanted somehow to find a way to take away that negative connotation that has to do with assisting your family. So me, I'm just like, since my black tax is big, I must just as well call myself Black Tax God.
Because black tax, like, you'll be in the same position as someone, but technically you earn lower than them because you also have to assist back home. And it makes it challenging because, the entertainment budget now is like, the tax is cutting from the entertainment budget. So it's like...
Entertainment budget is big. Eh?
What do you think, like, how do we then change this? Like, how have you navigated it? Like, how do you see it? Like, you built your mom a house and you had to make sacrifices.
Yeah.
If someone wants to say, no, it's black tax, but if it's not black tax, then what is it?
It depends, because for me, when I leave Joburg, I want to go back into a nice house. So I even though I built that house for my mom, it's also for me as well. Because I need to go back to a nice space. And you know how hot it is in Limpopo? Imagine now, I mean, the RDP house that we live in currently, because she hasn't moved into the actual house that we built. It's soldered like on the windows. The windows are soldered, so you can't open the window. It's so hot in there. I'm like, there's no way. I need to live soft life also at home, if that makes sense. But I also think navigating it, it's being able to manage people's expectations. I think people struggle with that quite a lot. And what I've done on my side is that
What do you mean managing expectations?
family members can be demanding sometimes. The ones they think you're living in
Now you
Sandton.
can't post, you know,
You're living in Sandton.
and you're going on holiday because you were big on that.
Yes, I love my
Yeah,
holiday.
the first thing you did when you started working was go on holiday a
Yes,
lot.
and I was, and I was booking houses in Camps Bay. I really enjoyed my life. And I think one of the things that I will advise people to not do, you don't share your salary with your parents.
Yeesh,
You
I
don't share
made
your
that mistake.
Me, they don't know. They really don't know how much I earn, and I can hear
Because
estimations.
they start budgeting.
They start budgeting
For you.
with your salary now. So never do that. And that's one thing that I never did. I never shared any figures at all. So whatever that I provide, it's enough.
So yeah, and
that's
there's
what
a
I mean
limit.
by
You have to draw boundaries.
No, you have to. And sometimes you must say you don't have when you do. I had then go back and say, hey, can I assist with half? Things like that.
But then
You
now
must
they
be
learn.
very
Now
strategic.
they're like, okay, if I want 400, I must ask for 800 now.
You see now.
So they adapt to like your.
They adapt.
They adapt to your way
So
because
as much as you have a job that where you have to manage expectations of your managers, even your family is like a job. You have to manage. You have to work it around. If that makes sense.
even your family is like a job, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And it needs to have boundaries because I think that's where the resentment is coming from,
Yeah.
right? Where now you're like you feel obliged to do it,
Yeah.
and you don't have boundaries.
I don't want to do it because I'm forced to do it. I want to do it because I want to do it. And the moment people start, what's that, expecting you, like feel like you're obligated to, then it starts feeling like a tax. Then
It starts feeling like a tax because
Yes.
now it's like your entire being,
Yes.
your entire salary. Like for instance, if you don't have like boundaries,
Yeah.
you're gonna feel like you're missing out on life.
Definitely.
So the black tax situation for me, it's gonna need to be settled, especially amongst us the youth, as the first generation, this first generation that, right? Especially around like how do you define those boundaries? Like
Yeah.
if your mom calls you and says there's no electricity or there's no food, like you can't draw a boundary around that.
Yeah.
So so is there any other reflection that you have on that?
I mean, to be honest, it's still very similar. All right. Let me give you an example. So my mom came to visit my place in Joburg, and she looked at my place. Already she was asking like, guys, how much does it cost to rent? She's seeing the nice pool, the nice rooftop, everything. She's like, how much does it actually? So now they're doing calculations. you get what I'm
Trying
saying?
to estimate.
So I think there is also like this thing of where people, new money kind of, people try to jump already to, hey, this is what I used to eat, so I'm going to spoil my family then with, not spoil them, but this is now, it's going to be the standard of the living. You're also setting a tone now because, if she was eating pap and meat and I increased that and, the quality, everything, and not just bring like a truck of everything, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's also managing.
pacing yourself.
You're pacing yourself and you managing people's expectations, because they always say like, mama, dad or uncle used to say all the time, if you're married and you bring your partner who knows who lives in Venda and who's used to the way we live life there. Now you bring them to Sandton. You must know that there's higher expectations that you actually bring to
Because they're gonna wanna socialize and be in the circles.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think the pacing yourself argument is maybe a strategy that can be applied. So jumping to another conversation, which is around the fundraising drive that you did during COVID.
Yes.
I remember when I saw that, I was like, this is why we need people from underprivileged backgrounds to occupy more privileged positions, right?
Definitely.
Because from your position, many people had the same platform, right? Many people could have done the same thing.
Even more
But very
followers.
few people know what it's like and would go into that position and use the platform to, because you knew, like you come from that background, so you knew, it's COVID, people are not able to go to work, people are going to go hungry.
Yes, definitely.
That was like something that was in your mind, whereas everybody else was like, how do I not get the virus and whatever? So like, how did that idea come up?
So actually, as they started announcing the COVID, the lockdown, it's like I really went back to home, like as I was still like low and young. And I'm like, wow, this took me to a very sad place because I'm like, shucks, it actually means that so many people that depend on, even I'm in a Tondo, we see so many people selling stuff there just for survival. It actually means that they weren't able to get food. And no one had announced, anything to help or the government or anything. And I remember just going to that dark space and I'm like, nah, I gotta do something about it. I don't know if that makes sense. And me in my head, because I'm very motivated or I'm very inspired, so I thought I was gonna raise R1 billion.
But you had a plan, like the plan was R1 billion.
The plan was R1 billion. So I post this plan on my Instagram. I'm seeing people are viewing. People are not even saying anything. I'm like, I'm gonna do this thing on Monday. They're not. Then I'm like, maybe let's go to that strategy again of, you have to face the reality of knowing your weaknesses and your strength, right? And within that, then I'm like, maybe you're not an influencer when there's no reaction that people that anyone it's actually that you are actually getting from this.
And that could have been so demotivating.
And me, I'm stubborn. So if you
is that how you then went on LinkedIn then?
No, then what I started doing then is that what I started doing was I messaged all my Instagram followers about the plan. I was just copy and pasting. I'm like, can you please repost this when I do post it, but I'm going to do it tonight. And
so support again.
But I'm like, I need a jump start. So I call all my friends. I mean, now we're all waking. I'm like, okay, so you guys need to donate now. So I'm going to start this thing. Immediately as I started, you guys are starting to donate so that it seemed like
it's gaining
and people now are starting, people, we go with the flow. And so after doing that, and I think the reason why people wanted to contribute to this is because I've been speaking about my story for that long that for me to do it, it was actually, they understood where it was coming from. And I mean, again, probably I'm made more than 50,000 with less than 5 hours. And then I started doing it on Twitter and, on LinkedIn. I mean, one day when the Tusa campaign that I did was trending on top of Beyonce's song, I was like, we made it. Yeah, and managed to raise like close to 300,000 and help more than 500 families actually in South Africa. Not just in Venda.
Like all over South Africa.
All over South Africa.
So you're carrying, as you get successful,
Yeah.
you will be carrying your community with you.
Yeah.
And I think we should keep that in mind and really find pleasure in it and fulfillment in the fact that
Yeah.
we're developing, but also because of the communities that we come from, us benefiting is them benefiting as well, right?
Definitely. Yeah.
That's why we need to provide more access and more to poor communities in South Africa.
Yeah.
So,
And
do you have any words of oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. But I was saying, and even within that, right? I mean, even though I was doing it and not expecting anything, I mean, I got an ABSA sent me to One Young World in London last year, which was based on the stuff, on the raising money that I did to meet Megan and Harry. When was I ever going to get that opportunity? And I mean, it presented like a lot of opportunities for me as well.
Yeah.
So there is kind of a way, not saying that people should be motivated over the fact that they will benefit from something, but when you do good things in the world, the universe have a way of actually
Rewarding you.
Rewarding you, yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Shumani. Do you have any parting words for someone who is in your position in rural Limpopo?
Yeah.
Who wants to go ahead in life as well? And end up like you?
To be honest with you, I think one of the best things, one of the things that really helped me a lot was being vulnerable enough to actually tell people when I'm struggling. I remember, I spoke of the time when I was at university, and, and I was actually struggling with finances. And there's so many people that actually really helped me quite a lot with that. And I mean, one of the guys, his name is Patrick. He actually really helped me a lot with my fees. And that helped quite a lot. It released the pressure of that. So I think the most important thing is taking away the pride. If you poor, there's nothing for you to lose by just asking for help. And I think just applying and having the audacity to apply. I mean, even for me to apply at UCT, I went to someone at church and I asked them for a little bit of cash. Like, hey, can you please help me with this?
Applying.
Yeah. So I think just that pride, to not allow pride to get in the way of your journey of success.
Thank you so much for joining us, Shumani.
Thank you.
Thank you to my viewers for joining us for episode 4 of Safe Space. See you soon.